Imagine a night full of revelry, laughter and camaraderie, suddenly turning into a chilling nightmare. It was a typical Friday night at the prestigious century-old university. The campus was buzzing with excitement and anticipation as young hopefuls gathered around the revered fraternity house, eager to earn their place within its hallowed halls. It was initiation night, a rite of passage, a ritual as old as the fraternity itself. A sea of anxious faces, the pledges, stood waiting outside the towering mansion. Their hearts pounded in sync with the rhythmic bass of the music that escaped through the cracks of the ancient wooden doors. Each one had a dream to belong, to become part of something bigger than themselves. A hush fell over the crowd as the doors of the fraternity house swung open. The initiation was about to begin. The game, as it was fondly referred to, was a tradition passed down through generations. It was a test of courage, a trial by fire. It started off as a seemingly innocent game, a test of grit and determination, but as the night wore on, it would soon take a dark and deadly turn. The game was simple. Each pledge was to perform a series of tasks, each more daunting than the last. Success meant acceptance, failure meant disgrace. It was meant to be a night of exhilaration, a night to prove one's mettle, a night to remember. The game, once full of cheers and laughter, now had an air of dread. The jovial atmosphere had been replaced by a chilling silence, the kind that makes your skin crawl. The pledges, young and naive, were gripped by a fear they'd never felt before. Their eyes, wide with terror, darted around the room, looking for a way out, but there were none. The fraternity members, on the other hand, seemed indifferent. They laughed, they joked, they poured another round of drinks. It was all part of the game, they said. But the game was no longer fun, it was no longer about brotherhood, it had turned into a nightmare. As the night wore on, the challenges grew more dangerous. One pledge was dared to jump off the roof into the swimming pool below. He was hesitant, but the jeers and taunts from the fraternity members were relentless. With a deep breath he took a leap of faith, but missed the pool by a few feet. The laughter that had filled the air was replaced by a deafening silence. The pledge lay motionless on the ground, his body twisted in an unnatural angle. The fraternity members stood frozen, their smiles fading into expressions of shock and horror. Paramedics were called, but it was too late. The pledge, full of dreams and ambitions, had taken his last breath. The game had claimed a life that was snuffed out too early. The fraternity members were left to grapple with the reality of their actions. The game, which had started as a night of fun, had turned deadly. A young man was dead, and they were responsible. The night of revelry ended in a tragedy, a life lost to a senseless game. Another initiation, another pledge, another horror story to tell. Imagine a young man, eager to join the ranks of a prestigious fraternity, ready to prove his worth to the brothers he so admired. But little did he know, the initiation he was about to undertake would be a test not of camaraderie, but of sheer survival. One chilly October night, the pledge was blindfolded and driven to a remote location. The brothers' laughter echoed in the air as they pushed him out of the vehicle, leaving him alone in the heart of the woods. His blindfold was removed, and the car's headlights faded into darkness. The only sound was the rustling of leaves, and his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. The pledge was told this was a test of courage, a rite of passage, but as the minutes turned into hours and the cold seeped into his bones, the terrifying realization set in. He was utterly alone, lost in the woods, with no idea how to find his way back. His mind started playing tricks on him, each rustle in the underbrush a potential threat. His heart pounded in his chest as he fought the rising tide of panic. He tried to remember the survival skills he'd learned from watching adventure shows, but his mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion. A cry for help, lost in the wilderness, unheard and unanswered. Picture, if you will, a young man trembling in the cold, huddled against a tree, his voice hoarse from screaming. He's been left alone, abandoned in the middle of nowhere as part of a sickening initiation ritual. He's scared, he's lost, and above all he's desperate. He's a pledge, a potential member of a fraternity, left to fend for himself in the unforgiving wilderness. This pledge had trusted his fraternity brothers, had believed in their promise of brotherhood. But as the night wore on and the chilling winds howled around him, he began to realize the bitter truth. His so-called brothers had left him alone, his safety a mere afterthought in their twisted game. And what of those fraternity members, you ask? They were back at their warm, comfortable house, toasting to another successful initiation. Their laughter echoed through the halls, their merriment a stark contrast to the desperation of the pledge they had left behind. Their indifference to his plight was as chilling as the winds that whipped through the trees. The pledge's cries for help echoed through the night, a haunting melody of despair and fear. But his pleas fell on deaf ears, his calls for assistance lost in the wilderness. His fraternity brothers, the very people he had trusted with his safety, were too caught up in their own fun to even consider his well-being. And as the sun rose, the pledge was nowhere to be found. Search parties were sent out, his name called out in the hopes of a response, but there was nothing. The young pledge, full of hope and dreams, was gone. His cries for help had been left unanswered, his desperate pleas fading into the cold morning air. The pledge was never seen again, his cries for help forever echoing in the woods. In the name of brotherhood, another horror unfolds. The third tale we're delving into is not for the faint-hearted. A chilling initiation ritual, designed to bind the pledges to their fraternity brothers, but in reality, a sinister torture chamber. Picture this: young men, full of hope and ambition, subjected to unthinkable torment. Physical harm that pushed their endurance to the brink, and mental distress that would leave even the stoutest heart quivering. Psychological warfare played out in the guise of bonding. The pledges were forced to bear the unbearable, all in the name of brotherhood. The initiation was supposed to foster a bond between the brothers, a bond forged in the crucible of shared suffering. But what it truly did was blur the line between fraternity and sadism. In the torture chamber, the line between brotherhood and brutality was blurred. The price of brotherhood was paid in pain and suffering. The aftermath of the brutal hazing ritual left indelible marks on the pledges. Physically, they bore the scars, bruises, and broken bones, a testament to the inhumanity they had endured. But the physical injuries were only the beginning. The psychological scars ran deeper, lingering long after the physical wounds had healed. Nightmares haunted their sleep, vivid and terrifying, a constant replay of their ordeal. Days were no better, filled with anxiety, fear, and a sense of isolation. They had sought brotherhood, camaraderie, a sense of belonging. Instead, they found a world where cruelty was masked as tradition, where respect was measured in the ability to endure pain. The price they paid for this so-called brotherhood was far too steep. In the end, the pledges were left with a harsh realization. The price of brotherhood was too high, paid in pain, suffering, and sometimes even lives. In the wake of horror, lessons are learned, but at what cost? Our journey through these three unsettling true frat-hazing horror stories has been a chilling one. We've borne witness to the terror of A Night to Remember, where a night of initiation turned into a nightmare. We've seen how the game turns deadly, as what started as a harmless tradition became a lethal trap. And we've been haunted by The Forgotten Pledge, where loyalty was pushed to the breaking point, leading to devastating consequences. Each tale has shown us a grim side of fraternity life. They've reminded us that beneath the camaraderie and brotherhood, there can lurk a darkness that manifests itself in dangerous hazing rituals. These rituals, born from tradition and carried out in the name of unity, too often disregard the value of human life. But what do we take away from these stories? Do we merely shudder at the horror and move on? Or do we confront the reality and seek change? The answer, my friends, should be clear. We must learn from these tales of terror, and use them as a catalyst for change. We must challenge the traditions that breed such horrific actions, and put the value of human life above all else. The consequences of these dangerous hazing rituals are serious and far-reaching. They not only endanger lives but also breed a culture of fear and dominance. This is a culture that has no place in our institutions of learning, where young minds should be nurtured and not tormented. It's time to shed light on this dark side of fraternity life. It's time to expose these harmful practices, address the issues they raise, and work towards eradicating them. Only then can we hope to prevent more such horror stories from unfolding. These stories serve as a chilling reminder of the dark side of fraternity life, a side that needs to be exposed, addressed, and eradicated.